John chapter 21, verses 17 through 23. And I was reading these scriptures recently, and the Lord just laid it on my heart to share some things that I saw in here that I think could be beneficial to us and be encouraging to us. But John 21 and 17 reads as follows. It says, He saith unto him the third time. Now, to understand where we're starting at, this is Jesus talking to Simon Peter. If you guys remember, if you're familiar with the story, and if not, go back and read John chapter 21. But if you're familiar with the story, you may have to go back a little bit more than that. But it's dealing with when Jesus came back on the scene, when he was resurrected and he revealed himself to the disciples. At this point, Peter had pretty much went back to his old lifestyle. It was almost like he had backslid, because he went back to the thing that God had called him from. He had went back fishing. He had took some brothers with him. He said, listen, I'm going back to do what I used to do. They was like, listen, we're going with you. And Jesus appears to them, and he starts to deal with Peter. And as he's talking to Peter, he asks him, listen, do you love me? And Peter's like, yeah. He was like, well, feed my sheep. And where we are taking it from is that third time he asked him that. And if you also remember, Peter, he had went off on some people when they was like, listen, we know you are the same young man that was hanging with this Jesus. And he flipped out and cursed some folks out. So he did that. And then we know that the cock crowed just like Jesus said it would. And, he was hurt by that. And then he just pretty much went back into his old lifestyle, or into that old lifestyle that God had called him from. So now God is restoring him. He's dealing with him. And we're going to pick it up from the third time he asked him, does he love him? So verse 17 says, He saith unto him the third time, Simon, son of Jonas, lovest thou me? Peter was grieved because he said unto him the third time, lovest thou me? And he said unto him, Lord, thou knowest all things. Thou knowest that I love thee. Jesus saith unto him, feed my sheep. Verse 18 says, Verily, verily, I say unto thee, when thou wast young, thou girdest thyself and walkest whither thou wouldest. But when thou shalt be old, thou shalt stretch forth thy hands, and another shall gird thee and carry thee whither thou wouldest not. This spake he, signifying by what death he should glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he saith unto him, follow me. So after Jesus says all this to him, the two major words he says to him is follow me. Verse 20. Then Peter, turning about, seeth the disciple whom Jesus loved following, which also leaned on his breast at supper, and said, Lord, which is he that betrayeth thee? Peter, seeing him, saith to Jesus, Lord, and what shall this man do? And for those of you that don't know who the scriptures is talking about, it's talking about the same exact person, the gospel that we are reading out of. It is talking about John. So here it is. John is following behind them. He's following Jesus. And Peter looks back and he asks this question. Peter, seeing him, saith to Jesus, Lord, and what shall this man do? Jesus, verse 22, Jesus saith unto him, if it's my will that he tarry till I come, what is that to thee? So Jesus says, listen, whatever it is that he's supposed to be doing, or whatever it is that I'm going to be doing with him, what is that to you? I've already asked you the questions I needed you to answer, and I've already begin to give you instructions, and I've already told you to follow me. In other words, follow my lead. So he's basically saying, like, listen, what is it to you what's going on with him? He's basically saying to him, listen, why is it you're concerned what's going to happen with him, or what I am going to do with him? So once again, verse 22, Jesus saith unto him, if I will that he tarry till I come, what is that to thee? Follow thou me. He says the same thing he said to him in verse 19. Follow me. Verse 23 says, then went this saying abroad among the brethren, that disciple should not die. Yet Jesus said not unto him, he shall not die. But if I will that he tarry till I come, what is that to thee? So not only was Peter worried about what was going to be going on with John or what John should be doing. But we see even after the fact, a rumor went out. Now the Bible doesn't tell us who, put the rumor out or how it spread, but, and that's, we can go into a whole nother thing dealing with that. But, on top of that, a rumor spreads out of something that Jesus did not say. But that's not what I wanted to really deal with. I kind of wanted to deal with Peter in that 21st verse saying, Lord, and what shall this man do? Because I think many of us at some point in our lives, we could identify with Peter. And what I mean by that is focusing on what somebody else should be doing or what are they going to be doing, and not necessarily worried or focused on what we should be doing. And I love how the Lord addressed them. And that's how he addresses us. If you're truly striving to be led by the Lord, the Lord will deal with you. If you are not focused on the task at hand, what it is that you should be doing, the Lord will deal with you and say, listen, you need to focus on what you need to do. And why? Because it's a lot just trying to do what God has called you to do, let alone to be worried about what somebody else should be doing. And that's what I wanted to talk to you guys on this week about. Stop focusing on what everybody else is doing or what everybody else should be doing. Just make sure that you are doing what it is that you are supposed to be doing. And it's so easy to get off track. It's so easy to not focus on our own endeavors, not focus on our own goals or the goals that God has set before us, the purpose that he has for our lives. It's so easy to look at what somebody else is not doing or try to give somebody else information on how they should be doing it, or looking at what somebody else is doing and saying, oh, I wouldn't have did it that way. I would have did it this way. And maybe if they would have did it this way, it would be more successful. And it's like, listen, that should not be your concern. Your concern should be mainly what it is that God is calling you to do. And what's so powerful is when you look back in that 20th verse, it says, then Peter turning about, seeth the disciple whom Jesus loved following. And I think that word is so huge in these few scriptures, that follow me. And you see John following, and then Jesus says to Peter again after he deals with him, follow thou me. And it just shows the importance of following God's lead. Like, that is super important, that we continue to focus on Jesus and follow his lead. Here it is, John, he's not trying to dip into their conversation. It doesn't tell us that John is butting in and saying, well, what am I supposed to be doing? Or why are you telling him to do that? No, all he's doing is just following the Lord. But yet Peter turns around and says, listen, what is it that he should be doing? And it reminds me of my son sometimes, just dealing with my sons. I told you guys about my sons, Trevor Jr., he's 9, Trayvon, he's 8. And sometimes I'll tell either one of them to do something, and a lot of times it's mainly my oldest, Trevor. I'll tell him to do something, and he'll be like, well, what about Trey? Or why isn't Trey doing this? And I'm like, listen, why are you worried about him? I've given you instructions to take care of this. What it is that he's going to need to do, I'm going to let him know what he needs to do. But it's just kind of like human nature sometimes. With them being young, I kind of understand it from them. But sometimes those of us that are of an older age, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s, sometimes even though we've been living life for a long time now, we still can find ourselves worrying about what others are doing. And sometimes when we are constantly worried about what other people are doing, it can cause us to not do what we are supposed to be doing. And that was one of the main reasons why I wanted to talk to you guys, because listen, like I said earlier, it takes a lot, especially when it's dealing with something that God has called you to do, or something that God has placed in your heart to do, whether that's ministry, whether that's reaching out to somebody, whatever it is, it's going to take a lot of work to get that done. And a lot of times we don't get those things done because we are so focused on what everybody else is doing. I'm going to tell you like this. If you're going to do whatever it is that God has called you to do in your life, it's going to take some serious focus. It's going to take some serious time. It's going to take some serious sacrifice. You need all the time you can get. You don't have any time to be worried about what somebody else is doing, or trying to tell somebody else what they should be doing. It's like, no, let's show and prove by doing what it is that we are supposed to be doing. And maybe by them seeing us doing what we are supposed to be doing and being successful at it, maybe by them seeing us, all of the sacrifices that are being made on top of our everyday lives, and seeing the results, seeing the fruit that is coming from what it is that we're doing, maybe that will encourage them to follow his lead. Then when they come to us, they can say, well, how are you doing that? I know you got this going on. I know you got that going on. I know you got a family. I know you got to work. We can say, listen, if it was not for me focusing on the Lord and following his lead, this would not be possible. And that's just what I wanted to encourage you guys on. It's easy. It is super easy to focus on what everybody else is doing and what they should be doing. But it takes super focus. It takes, to be super intentional to focus on what it is that you have to do. And that's what God wants us to do. He wants us to focus on him and his leadership, and to focus on the task at hand, what it is that he has called us to do. Think about Peter. What did he tell him? He says, listen, feed my sheep. Like I've given you your instructions. This is what I want you to do. And in the midst of doing that, you're going to do that as you follow my lead. Follow me. Even though he could have just been saying in these particular scriptures right here, when he said follow me, he could have been just telling them just right then and there, just follow me to where I'm walking to. But I think it has a lot more significance to it than that. I think it is also showing us the importance of following the Lord fully, the importance of following him when he has called us to do something. So I think there's way more there than just a physical, keep following me as I talk to you type of situation. And I just think it was so profound and so awesome how verse 20 showed us and just explained how John, was following them. You know what I mean? How he was following. It didn't say he was speaking or he was talking. He was just following. And that's what I want to encourage you guys. Focus on the Lord and follow his lead.